Welcome to Divorce Dialogues. I'm Katherine Miller. Divorce Dialogues brings expert guests to the airwaves to talk through your divorce questions and fill in the gray areas about separating. From thinking about divorce to how to behave during divorce to what to do after, this is Divorce Dialogue. Welcome to Divorce Dialogues. I'm Katherine Miller. I'm the founder of the Miller Law Group, and I'm a trainer at the Center for Understanding in Conflict, and I am on a mission to change how people divorce and help them divorce with dignity. This is a holiday week, and as such, it is a time of great stress for people who are going through the divorce process, thinking about the divorce process, recently divorced. I remember that when I was first getting divorced, that the idea that I was going to go through the holidays without my children with me through those holidays every single year, as I had always planned, well, that was the hardest thing of the entire divorce process. And so I know that if you are facing your first Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas season without your kids, that those can be really, really challenging experiences to have. So I thought it might be a good idea to just have me in this session of Divorce Dialogues talking a little bit about first how you can make it through the holiday season in a different way if you don't have the kids this year, or maybe in a different way, even if you do have the kids this year, to change the traditions that you've had and do something new and creative. First of all, I want to say that when you are thinking about a parenting plan and how to divide up that special time, the holidays and vacations, people really have two options in terms of the theory of that when they do that. And one is the very traditional alternating. If you celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter, then you would alternate. And in one year, you'd have Thanksgiving, and the next year, your spouse would have Thanksgiving. And the same with Christmas, and try to balance them out throughout the calendar or the school year. But another way that is less often, it's less common, but it's also something really, I think, useful to consider, is that you decide to assign one holiday or decide to assign at least one holiday to each parent. And so that parent would have that holiday every year without fail with the children and have the opportunity to develop a new family tradition so the children don't feel like they don't get to develop in the same way that they might have if they'd had an intact family. So maybe one parent has Thanksgiving, in my example of a family that celebrates Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. Another one has Easter, and you go back and forth on Christmas or something like that. I just think it really is worth considering. I'm not telling you that this is the right thing for you, but it's definitely something that I think you should consider. All right, back to my original promise, which is to talk about what should you do if you are celebrating the holidays for the first time this year and post-divorce, post-separation, and maybe this is the year that you don't have your kids. Well, for one thing, make a plan. Don't just sit home alone Thanksgiving or go out to dinner with yourself and find some place while you see all the other families celebrating. Make a plan to do something with your family of origin, your sister, your brother, your neighbors, your friends, a community group. If nothing else, go to a homeless shelter or soup kitchen and serve the hungry and the needy so that you feel that you're out there in the world making social connections and doing something that isn't just a mourning what had been going forward. If you do have the kids this year and you always went to your in-laws for Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever holiday it is that you're celebrating, maybe there's a way of thinking about what a new tradition might be. I know that my kids all have a Friendsgiving before we have our family Thanksgiving. And maybe there's a Friendsgiving or a different kind of group that you could do with the parents of your children's friends, your own friends or neighbors. Maybe there's a block party or something like that. Or maybe there's a trip you could take. You've always wanted to spend the holidays in Florida or the Bahamas or something like that. Or it could just be upstate. It doesn't have to be something that's a plane ride, but doing something different and not trying to create as much of what was. And so you all sit around and feel sad about what no longer is, even if the divorce is something that you wanted and do feel that isn't in the best interest of the family going forward. So sometimes people do try to keep traditions going forward and have the holidays together, even though it can be kind of strained. And short term, there are pros and cons to this approach. A pro, of course, is that the children are with both parents, and it looks as much like it used to look as you can humanly make it possible. And that can be good. It can allow for some stability, a less of a tearing of what has been your family tradition. But there are some cons to it, and that might actually be surprising. On divorce dialogues and in my practice, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of mental health professionals who work with children going through the divorce process. And one thing that they have warned about, talked about a lot on this podcast and to me individually, is that sometimes when you try to hold things together for the kids as much as possible, it's confusing for them. So you say, okay, mom and dad are getting divorced, or mom and mom, dad and dad, we're getting divorced. We're not going to be living together. We both love you very much, but we don't love each other in that way anymore. And then you come together and celebrate the holidays. Like all kids, but my kids certainly told me that they, until I married my second husband, thought maybe there was hope that I'd get back together with their dad. And basically, all kids, all ever, and anywhere, hope that their parents are going to get back together. And when you give them false hope, it might be that it's just making it harder for them. So it's definitely something to consider whether or not you really want to do that. Also, if you think you're going to do that long term, think about how that's going to be when you repartner, especially if only one of you repartners. Let's say 2, 3 years out, one of you has repartnered and the other one has not. Is that going to be extremely difficult and painful? And will it, at that point, be harder to change the new tradition? Now you've made a new tradition of our divorced parents celebrating Thanksgiving together. Is that going to work for you when that happens? It can. I have that situation in my own family of origin, and it certainly does work out. It's not without tension and it's not always perfect. And the children are not children, but we have been able to manage a situation where the family encompasses both of the separated spouses and their new partners in a loving way. Another thing I think, just to change topics a little bit here, just to remind you, you're listening to Divorce Dialogues. This is a podcast dedicated to educating people about divorce and all kinds of separation, divorce, and relationship issues. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts to be sure that you don't miss an episode. Sometimes people wonder, I'm really unhappy and this marriage is over as far as I can tell, or I can tell that my spouse thinks it's over, but it's the holiday season. What should I do? Should I wait to start to make those choices or announcements, or should I just do it now? Well, one thing is you should consider the emotional toll because the holidays are a tough time. I mean, I think a lot of people come into my office and other offices like mine, I think in January, thinking, wow, I'm never going to go through another holiday season like that again. And so, is that going to be harder if you've made the decision and talked about it? Or is it going to be harder if you're just kind of white knuckling it, trying to get through? And is the stressors of travel, the stressors of having your in-laws, stressors of your own family of origin, the stressors of the demands of the children, the holiday schedule. What is that going to be like, whether or not you've made the decision or not made the decision? Now, I'm not here to say you should or shouldn't make it based on this. I'm here to say, think about what that's going to be like and don't just put it off because it might be easier. It might actually be harder to put it off and try to white knuckle it through the holidays. Another thing, if you have children, I think you should think about their perspective when you're thinking about whether or not to start talking about divorce before the holidays or after it. In my own divorce, Thanksgiving played a big part. It was a big drama, and it was really quite awful what happened the Thanksgiving that my husband and I were separating. And I don't need to go into the details here, but it was a very difficult holiday for the two of us, and I think for our families as well, not to mention the children. So think about the children's emotional well-being. And because the holidays are often associated with family love and togetherness, and if they know that you're about to split or you're fighting all the time, that can deeply affect their holiday memories. And so thinking about whether or not that's something that you want to do and what the pros and cons are makes a lot of sense. I think you should also consider the practical side. It's a hectic time. There's shopping, cooking, social engagements. And if you add in the complexities of divorce, that might feel overwhelming. But on the other hand, it might be even more overwhelming if you decide, again, not to wait until after, knowing in your mind that this is something that you're going to say, is something you're going to do, and having that, it's just going to be in your head all the time. And it's going to be really hard to make it through without a massive fight. I think you should also think about the dynamics in the situation. If it's highly volatile between you and your spouse, maybe it's healthier and safer to separate sooner rather than later. I'm almost sure it is, despite of the holiday season. And maybe that it'll be a calmer, easier for everybody if you're not together and you do things differently. Another thing to think about is the desire for a fresh start. Starting the new year with a new clear direction, being able to really think about your perspective and what your resolution is. And, a lot of people do, surprisingly, maybe make a New Year's resolution to deal with finally their sense of unhappiness in the marriage or sense of unfulfillment and loneliness. And if you want to be able to get that rolling, think about whether or not you want to wait till January, if you want to do it before the holidays. I just want to circle back to the children for a minute because I would be concerned that if you made it through the holidays and then dropped the bomb on December 26th or January 3rd, and I say drop the bomb, and maybe it won't be like that, but it feels like it is. I wonder if they'll be concerned that somehow or other, after every happy event, there might be some bad news. It might be better to just tell them up front and be honest about it. Anyway, finally, before you make any decision as to whether or not to divorce before or after the holidays or at any time, it's really important to get some advice and not necessarily advice from your best friend, although that could certainly be very helpful, but to seek some professional advice from a counselor, a lawyer, or someone who can really help you understand the divorce process, especially as you go through the holiday season and try to do the best that you can do. Because I know this is a difficult time and you are doing the best that you can do. Anyway, I'm Katherine Miller, and this is Divorce Dialogues. Please check out our previous episodes and our future episodes on the podcast website, divorcedialogues.com. And I really appreciate your time, attention, and have a happy holiday season.